Next up, I have some, let me grab them. Hey everyone, hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about fall book recommendations. I feel like I'm really late on the fall book recommendations train, but we're just going to ignore that and I'm just going to tell you what I would recommend you read this fall. All of these are favorite books. I still own them. I own books that I tend to really enjoy, and I think you'll really enjoy them too, and it will really get you into the cozy fall, fun, wonderful, like snuggle up in a big blanket, wonderful kind of mood. All right? Now, if you're new to my channel, then hi, I'm Shelly. I really love books and reading, and I share all of those recommendations, all of my book life with you on this channel. So if you are enjoying the vibe, I would encourage you to subscribe, like the video, and without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. I have broken this all into categories, and my first category is mystery. When I think fall time, autumnal weather, things are getting colder, I also want to turn into a detective. Just call me Sherlock. I want to be on the crime, on the case. I want to be out in the neighborhood solving mysteries, puzzles, putting things together, and laying it all before everyone to show my brilliance. Although that doesn't ever really happen. So what I'm saying is that I really like a good mystery. And there are two mystery series that I adore. One of which is the Elizabeth George mystery series. This is, funnily, Elizabeth George is an American writer, but she sets her mysteries in England. And because of the English setting, we get kind of gray, rainy weather. I've heard it's very rainy over there. I have only been to England once, and I was only in Heathrow Airport. So take that with what you will. There is an atmosphere to these novels, and they also have just great characters. Wonderfully flawed yet likable characters. And if you are all about a group dynamic, not necessarily a found family, but a friend dynamic that is strong and complex and continues to evolve as the books go on, because gracious, there are like 30 books in this series, then I would definitely recommend this Elizabeth George series. And it's one of those things where each book is a really strong read, though only a few stand out as an amazing read. However, it is not the sum of its parts. It is, what is it? The whole is bigger than the sum of its parts. I forget the saying. Oh my goodness. So what I'm saying is that the series itself is really readable, wonderful, and you only care about the characters ever so more as the books go on. And you realize, why they act the way they act, why they struggle with what they struggle with, and you just love them all the more as the books go on. I think I've read 10 books in this series, and they tend to be my go-to for fall and winter. Another fantastic book series is going to be Tana French's book series. She has two series going right now, one of which is the Dublin Murder Squad series. This is the second book in this series. The first one is In the Woods. I can't remember. I will leave a book cover. Editing Shelly, I'm sorry. I will leave the book cover kind of floating so that you know. This is the second book, and they read a bit as standalones. You could technically, I think, pick up a book anywhere in the series and roll with it. I like to read series in order. So this is the second book in the series, and each book focuses on a different detective in the Dublin Murder Squad. So with this, I forget actually who we're with. Cassie. We're with Cassie. And in every book, the mystery in a lot of ways mirrors the internal life of whatever detective we're following at that time. And so because Cassie has this whole kind of emotional code, this emotional landscape of her own, the mystery she's trying to solve trips her up at times, and it's really fascinating. The mystery itself and the internal workings of each detective is utterly fascinating. Now, let me set this down. How flattering. The second series is the Searcher series. It's actually the Cal Hooper series. So Cal Hooper is an American. He's a cop from Chicago who took an early retirement. He's like in his 40s, I think. he took an early retirement to Ireland. He's living in this teeny little town, and because of his background as a cop, he gets sucked into some of the town drama, which it is one of those where this one you have to definitely read in order. Double Murder Squad, they are almost as if they are individual books that interconnected books in a way. This is definitely builds on one another. You have to read the first book in order to read the second book because of how the relationships evolve. And Cal Hooper gets sucked into some drama that he may or may not be looking for. Fantastic. The reason why I associate these with fall is because Ireland has its dreary moments, we'll say. I have not been to Ireland. I've heard it's gray and rainy quite a bit of the time. I had really good friends who lived there, and they lived here in my area in South Carolina, where it's often sunny, the weather is quite moody, and then they have moved to Ireland for some work stuff for a couple of years, and they said that the weather was super rainy, super gray. And what's great is that Tana French is great at writing atmosphere, so you get that atmospheric gray, rainy tones throughout, which also often mirror the mood of the mystery, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. My next category of books has to do with being alone, being with oneself in nature. I love the changing seasons because as it gets colder, it gives me an excuse to really cuddle up, be with myself, be with my books, be with my art, and really focus on those aspects of my life. Whereas summertime and really at the beginning of the school year, there's a lot of social activity, there's a lot of reconnecting with friends, with acquaintances. During the summer, there's a lot of going out and being outside. But when it comes fall, it gives me that excuse to sort of hibernate, reconnect with my own self. And I get to do all the things that I love most: draw, read, be by myself, and make videos and all of that. So 3 books in which we have authors that take a period of time away from humanity in order to write, but also to focus on the nature around them. And the first being Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. This is a book in which Annie Dillard, who's a wonderful writer, a wonderful essayist, she takes a period of time at Tinker Creek, which I believe is in Virginia, something of that sort. And she is isolated, and she's also focused on her writing. So what does she have to write about? She has to write about her surroundings and what's going on around her, which is just wonderful. She thinks deeply about what's going on in nature. I think there's a scene with praying mantis, like bugs. I love bugs. I love a woman who loves bugs. So this is really my kind of thing. She is so observant, and so it is so beautifully rendered and so thoughtfully rendered that I just love this book. It is one that definitely gives me those autumnal vibes. Along those same lines, we also have Ring of Bright Water by Gavin Maxwell, who goes to this place, where is it? The Western Highlands of Scotland. But what I remember is not actually the Western Highlands of Scotland. He renames it to this fantasy-esque name called Chemisphyrna. He's spending his time in Chemisphyrna, and he's noticing more of the animals around him, and also he acquires an otter and notices the otter's behaviors and mood and just everything. But what stands out are the scenes where he's just writing about his daily life. For example, he wrote about manna from heaven. And as much as we're so grateful for the food that is provided for us, there's also this ick factor because the manna is redundant. It is the same flavor over and over and over. So on the one hand, you're grateful to have food, but on the other hand, you're like, can't you please provide something with a little bit more variety? So there's that just beautifully rendered, very honest, very sincere, I would say, just fantastic. And then the final book is Fox and I by Catherine Raven, who's living in the Pacific Northwest, again on a plot of land that she mostly has by herself. She does have a connection with a university, I believe, that she's teaching at the time. However, a lot of it is living on this land and the strange and odd problems that arise as she is living on this land. Like the problem with voles, which are these little mice-like creatures. They're so interesting. And she talks about this problem with voles and why they're a problem and some of her solutions. So it's quite funny. And at the time, she befriends a fox and makes a connection with this fox as much as you could make a connection with a fox. Fantastic. Sometimes I want a mystery, but I don't want a mystery. I want a literary mystery. I want something that is not quite a whodunit. I don't exactly want to be Sherlock Holmes. I want to be something other than Sherlock Holmes. I don't want to be the one trying to piece together the information rather than just the observer going along for the ride, and someone a little bit more on the outside of it all. And I have a couple of books for that. The first one is a wonderful mystery-esque book, fast-paced, incredibly quippy dialogue, incredible writing, and that is Percival Everett's The Trees. This is about a murder that happens, a couple of murders that happen in Money, Mississippi, and it is so incredible. I am in awe of how wonderfully sharp Percival Everett's writing is. My camera stopped recording, so I had to reset it real quick. Anyways, next book has to do with fall vibes. It is the book that everybody recommends. And so I'm not unusual in recommending it. It is one of those mysteries, but it's not a whodunit, it's a whydunit, because you know right at the beginning who has done the murdering, and now it's all about what in the world or why. It's very autumnal because it is a campus novel. That's what I was going to say. Our protagonist has just started college in New England. New England is, for those of you who may not know, though I'm sure all of you do, it's in the northeastern part of the United States where they truly get all of the changing seasons. And so it has that very autumnal vibe because you are in this place that feels very autumnal, or should feel very autumnal when fall hits. And we meet our protagonist as he is starting college in the fall. And there is a lot of focus on what he's wearing, and he's trying to break into this very prestigious group of students. There's a focus on Greek and Latin literature and language, pretentiousness to the max. And what I'm talking about is The Secret History by Donna Tartt, who is just fantastic at pulling the reader in with the sense of atmosphere. She is the queen of atmosphere. And this is definitely one of those fall books. And for readers who are wanting a mystery, but something not necessarily traditionally mystery, as maybe pretentious people would say, a literary mystery. My last one is a historical mystery that is so wonderfully done and enraging and fantastic and wild. In this, we're in 1663 England, and a murder has happened, and you're wondering what in the world. In this book, we get 4 accounts, and they're wildly different. So I'm talking about the instance of the finger post by Ian Pears. In this, we're following an outsider who. This book is wild. It is really good, but it is really wild because there is a section. You get 4 different narrators, 4 different accounts of the same murder, and you wonder who in the world actually did it. Some of them are clearly liars. Some of them have tweaked the information so that it is more favorably towards their own will, or it benefits them. And and in one of the accounts, we are literally following someone who is wildly insane, though there is some truth in his account. It's a chunkster of a book. It's a really good book. At times, I found it sort of enraging, being in the mind of a a crazy person, essentially, but found it very satisfying in the end. Again, it's for one of those people who want mystery adjacent type reads and don't mind a really long, chunky, thick book. Let's talk about some classics that have an autumnal vibe. The first up being The Tin Flute by Gabrielle Roy, although it's spelled Roy, R-O-Y, but I've been told it's Roy. She is a French-Canadian author. This is a translated work, translated by Hannah Josephson, and this is about an incredibly poor family who is barely making it. Their struggle is what keeps the reader engaged, and boy do they struggle. So we have Florentine and Anna Rose, who's the father, and Azarias is the... No, Anna Rose is the mother, and Azarias is the father. In this cover, which is very, very in poor shape. Look at, oh, it is just not in the best shape. However, it has the faces of the main characters on it, which is wonderful. And Florentine is our main woman in this. She's a young lady. She is torn between a couple of different suitors, but really she comes from a family who is barely making it. And Wah has this way of getting her readers engaged and invested in the absolute disparity of what is happening. This is the precipice, I believe, of World War II. I could be wrong, it might be World War I. I tried to look it up, but alas, here's where we are. And so Canadians are about to join a world war. And it is about the lead up to joining a war, but also just how much of a struggle daily life is in Canada at that time. Just barely scraping it together. And then having these moments where the family is really in peril and really could use a break, essentially, like some mercy, some grace in their life, someone to shine a light and give them a moment of goodness. And we watch that struggle as readers. It is really a fascinating book. It's a lovely book and beautifully rendered. Next up is another book. I feel as if everybody recommends it during the fall, but it is very autumnal and it is very moody. It's a very moody book. And that is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, in which we watch Victor Frankenstein play God and create a monster, although it is fascinating. This book is so different than how we as popular culture see it. And I also see people say that on YouTube. I feel like I'm just parroting everything I hear on YouTube. The interesting thing is that some of it is rendered in letters to and from different people. It's done in correspondence. So there's this sense that the rumors about Victor Frankenstein and his creation is affecting a whole town. I was so surprised at how much I absolutely despised Victor Frankenstein. I found him one of the most petulant characters in all of literature. And how, when you meet the monster, how my emotional reaction to the monster at the time was very surprising to me. I don't want to give it all away, but fantastic, fantastic book. We also have Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Now, Daphne du Maurier writes atmosphere like no other. She is really, really good at capturing a place. And in this place, we have Manderley, which is this house that is in some ways in isolation away from the world, which gives you kind of haunted house, spooky house vibes. And we have this unnamed narrator who is living as the new Mrs. De Winters, but what happened to the old Mrs. De Winters? And now the new Mrs. De Winters has stepped into the shoes of the old Mrs. De Winters, and what actually happened with the old Mrs. De Winters? And so you have this mystery, you have this beautiful atmosphere, and it is just wonderful. The writing, Daphne du Maurier's writing is second to none. She's so good at what she does. And I've heard she writes some really great historical fiction books, which I'm very interested in. My final classic is none other than a lost love, reconnected, what is it, second chance love? What is it called? A second chance love? I can't remember. But a love that didn't work out years ago and you have a second chance at it. And it is Persuasion by Jane Austen. Now, this is her most mature work, And this, because of its maturity, I feel like we're not getting the summer romance. We're not getting the Elizabeth Bennets in this. We are not getting the bright-eyed and bushy-tailed protagonists. We are getting somebody who has a little age on them and has a little life behind them. And what a little life can do for someone when they get a second chance with a lover that they rejected or maybe rejected them years ago. It is really beautiful. And I've read almost all of Jane Austen's works. It is very emotionally mature for Jane Austen. And you can definitely tell that this was one of the last written pieces, if not the last written novel she rendered before her very young death, by the way. Too bad. I mean, I really wish Jane Austen would have written more so that we could have more of her wonderful work influencing our reading lives today. But this one being penned when she's older, you really get a sense of a reserved character, somebody who's not flippant, and somebody who's very thoughtful. And I could really appreciate that one as somebody who's reading, who is older than most of Austen's protagonists. My last 3 books are going to be introspective novels. We're following thoughtful protagonists who are going through wild things. Actually, all 3 of them go through quite wild things and wild experiences, whether it be just a moment of a life or an entire life. However, all of these characters are incredibly introspective and think deeply about the life that they are living. The first is I Who Have Never Known Men. So in this, we have a group of women who are living in a bunker underground, and they are captives. And our protagonist doesn't remember a life outside of this captivity. However, everyone else in the bunker does. And so because this young person is living in this very unique situation of not having memories outside of this current experience, it really gives her a different approach to life. She thinks she interacts with all these other women who reminisce about what their life was like before this bunker experience, having baths, their daily life, the daily complaints. And it's interesting to have this protagonist not have any of that. So all of her context is either being told to her, all of the context outside of this bunker is stories that she's hearing. She ends up being a very thoughtful and wonderful person to follow around as the novel evolves. And oh boy, does it evolve. I thought this was just such a thoughtful piece. Something a little bit more dramatic than Jacqueline Hartman's book, and it is The Year of Wonders by Geraldine Brooks. This is my first Brooks book, and I really hope it to not be my last because her writing is phenomenal. It is brutal. It's a brutal book. It's about this teeny tiny little town outside of London. It's in England. I wanted to make sure that I have my setting correct. We're in England, and the plague, it's set in 1666, so the plague comes to this tiny town, and it is about how humanity decides to take on this disease that is killing so many people and that can spread so quickly. Our protagonist, Anna, is so quiet and introspective. She's so thoughtful, and she really ends up being the unlikely hero of the story. I really loved being with Anna, and I think that was one of the most surprising things about the book. First of all, it does end up being quite brutal, which is a surprising factor, but how much I connected with such a quiet protagonist was another surprise of the book that I don't think is talked about enough when people talk about Year of Wonders. Anna is just a fascinating person to follow. And as this chaos is around her, she is kind of the calm amid the storm. And I love that about her. Talk about another person who is the calm amid the chaos and absolute bananasness of his life, and that is Jude in A Little Life. Now, Jude is a member of a 4-person friend group, and at first, in the beginning of the novel, one is not quite sure what friend we're going to end up focusing on, and very, very slowly, we start to realize that she is sharply focusing on, Hanya Yanagihara is sharply focusing on this character of Jude, who has the most wretched, tumultuous, wild, crazy past that I've ever read about. And it is so wonderfully rendered. I remember reading this in the course of being postpartum with my second child. It was just him and I at home, and I would be rocking him and he would fall asleep, and I would be in that sort of dreamlike state of being both awake because I had some energy because all I was doing was nursing a little baby, and also very, very tired. So what I would do is I would pull this book up on my Kindle. I had no idea. I went into this book truly blind, had no idea the reputation it had or anything like that. And I would read it until I fell asleep. And over the course of the couple weeks that I was reading it, it felt like I was submerged in this story. And I was just in its pages, being enveloped by the background that Jude had, which is brutal and horrible and awful, and wanting so much for Jude, our main character, wanting him to have happiness, wanting him to have a glimpse of peace in his life. And it is one of those books that is just delightfully, wonderfully introspective. I'm gonna stop. I love this book. I have such passion for it. I really ought to reread it, though I'm kind of scared to because it is really brutal. And yeah, that's it. Tell me all of your autumn book recommendations down below. I'm always looking for a good autumnal read. I like introspective books. I like off the beaten path kind of mysteries that are more maybe literary or historical mysteries that really give you that sense of the time period, but have maybe a little bit of funk to them. It's a little bit different. Would love to know that. I love a good memoir, especially if it's all about being out in the middle of nowhere, maybe befriending an animal. Anyways, give me all of your fall book recommendations. I want to know them, please. And that's it for me. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. And I will hope to see you all in my next one. Bye.